Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this In Conversation With event, focusing today on the ITCC-P4 project. I am Nathalie Signoret. I'm a scientific project manager in the Innovative Health Initiative. For those of you who may not be so familiar with the Innovative Health Initiative, or IHI, it is a public-private partnership between the European Union, represented by the European Commission, and the industrial sectors involved in health. And we are funding health research and innovation to transform health, benefit patients, and boost Europe competitiveness. This webinar will be very interactive, and towards the end of the webinar, you will have an opportunity to ask a question to our panelists to know more about the project if you have questions. So please, as we go along, make sure to record your question into the Q&A box that is at the bottom of your screen. This webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be made available very shortly on our website. Coming back to the project ITCC-P4, this is a project that was funded under the Innovative Medicine Initiative, which was the previous partnership preceding IHI. And this project focused on childhood cancer. The project that ended at the end of 2023 aimed to build a preclinical proof of concept platform to help prioritizing promising treatment for clinical development in children and adolescents with cancer. But you will hear everything about the project, its achievement, and the impact from our distinguished speakers that we have today who have been instrumental in this project. So let me introduce them to you. And I will start with you, Luz. Luz Toccato is an adjunct clinical assistant professor of pediatrics at the Indiana University School of Medicine. But at the time, Lou was very involved from the start of the project, being the project leader from Eli Lilly. You are now Vice President of Enabling Technologies and Global Leader of Pediatric Rare Disease Platform at the Indiana Bioscience Research Institute. Gilles Vassal, who is a very well-known pediatric oncologist at Gustave Roussy. And you were one of the academic leads, and you are now the Chief Operating Officer of the ITCC-P4 non-profit company that you will tell us everything about. And last but not least, Nicole Scobie, patient advocate, who have been, you are really active in various initiatives to improving access to treatment, as well as supporting children with cancer and their families. And notably now you are the chair of the Accelerate platform. So let's start now with the subject. And Nicole, I will ask you to tell us a little bit what are the unmet needs of children and adolescents with cancer.
Thank you, Natalie. Yes, so I think this is the key question that we can start with, so it's great. And obviously, when we talk about children with cancer, there have been many advances in the past century. But despite this, today, it is the first cause of death by disease in children and young people. So if we look at Europe, for example, there's roughly 6,000 children and young people who die every year, just in Europe. There's also survival rates for children with some kinds of cancers like solid tumors or brain tumors that have really stagnated for the past 30 years. And still today, of all cancer types, roughly 25% of children who have cancer relapse from their treatment, so the cancer comes back. And then typically they don't have access to any kind of curative treatment options. So this is something we all have to work on. It's crucial to identify innovative treatment approaches and to try to develop new anti-cancer drugs. But especially it's crucial to do all this research and then to bring it forward to make it available through market registration so that children now and in the future have access to these new treatments.
So Lou, now maybe you can tell us why there are so few anti-cancer drugs that are being developed to date for children compared to those for adults. And why was the need for public-private collaboration to address really these needs?
And this is coming from my pharma perspective. And first off, and speaking frankly, there's little money to be made in developing drugs for children with cancer. That's just a fact. Therefore, less has been invested in developing models of kids' cancer relative to, for instance, the big four of adult cancers, which are prostate, breast, colon, and lung. And so children were already at a deficit, not having the research tools available to the community, which could then identify the drugs to help those same children. Having said that, if an opportunity arose to study the potential for a drug in peds cancer that may be at the time developed for an adult cancer, it was difficult to do so because of the lack of readily available models. And this was around 2016. There were regulatory changes that were being spoken of and actually eventually put in place in both the EU and the US that suggested that pediatric development was going to have to be accelerated somehow. And this is going to significantly change the development landscape. For the first time, drugs under development for adult cancers could be held up if pediatric research was not agreed upon by the sponsoring company and the regulatory authorities. With so many drugs under development for adult cancers, it became important to prioritize which molecules we could bring forward. And to do so, to identify the quote unquote best drugs, we needed to have a system in place, a model to make scientifically driven decisions on which molecules should move forward, which ones we should prioritize, and at the same time, which ones maybe should not be developed, and perhaps the company should be given a waiver for those drugs. As I mentioned, the models were not easily accessible, often existed solely in academic labs. So really no single stakeholder in this whole process was going to fix the problem. It really necessitated the development of a public-private partnership where really financial gain, intellectual property, et cetera, were kind of pushed aside and everybody worked together to bring their respective expertise to the table in a pre-competitive fashion to develop this new platform, which was incredibly necessary at the time and I'm proud to say is now in place.
And so this is where ITCC-P4 came along. So Gilles, maybe you can tell us in one sentence, what about the other goal of the project and what you were pursuing as the ITCC-P4 consortium? You are on mute, Gilles.
Indeed, it's better if I am unmute.
We will understand a bit better.
Exactly. In the background just described by Nicole and Lou, the goal of the project was to create a new preclinical platform to run preclinical evaluation of new anti-cancer medicine on a fully newly established repertoire of pediatric models. Why? Because there is a need to prioritize among all the drugs developed in adults, the one that should be developed in children. And this is really to improve the choice of medicine that would be developed for children to cure them better.
And so now the project, as I said, was as finished, but it was a 6 years project and you had a large consortium with public and private partners. So what have been the key results of this project? And maybe, again, Gilles, we can tell us about the key results and the achievements.
So we have established a repertoire, a comprehensive repertoire of new pediatric tumor model, more than 300 pediatric tumor xenograph established from the tumor of the patient. And it is interesting because we represent more than 20 different pediatric cancers. The ones such as neuroblastoma with a quite large number of models, more than 30, or even the very rare. And for example, we have 2 malignant nerve sheath tumors, which are absolutely essential really to test at the preclinical level the relevance of any medicine. Second, we build from the molecular characterization of these tumors a huge, large database of all the molecular information that characterize this model. And interestingly, people online can go to the ITCC-P4.com website and will find information on the model, on the molecular results. And in addition, we have tested each of these models with regard to standard of care treatment to be able to say, well, this new medicine is active or not active on this set of tumors, pediatric tumors, with regard to what we know is working in children being used daily. So this is the deliverable in terms of models that is now exploited by the sustainable entity that we have created. In addition, we have generated some knowledge. We have developed a concept of target relevance, a way to identify whether a target is relevant for pediatric malignancies, and we have published that. But the key deliverable was this repertoire of models to be used in this sustainable platform for any researchers, academic, industry, really to find new drugs to be developed for children.
Thank you, Gilles. And I believe you have as well work on a consensus on how to develop or which kind of preclinical data is needed to support a pediatric cancer drug development.
Indeed, we have been working with researchers, with the FDA, with the EMA, with the pharmaceutical companies, with the support of the parents. And we established this international consensus for preclinical evaluation, which is now published and available to help anyone to know what is needed to be done to generate information for making a decision on a given drug for development for children.
So with all these results, maybe Lou, you can tell us a little bit more. Why is it so important, and the impact of these achievements, not only for the industry, but as well for any researcher from the community in order to move forward the pediatric oncology field?
Sure. As a result of our collective efforts, really for the first time that I'm aware of, pediatric research, in particular, talking about drug research and eventual development for kids with cancer, is essentially on an even footing with what's been available for adult cancer research for literally decades. By creating this diverse panel of tumor models that Gilles just laid out, we now have a resource that literally anyone in the world can turn to test their drugs. Our models are extremely well characterized. We understand what's happening at the level of their DNA, so call it molecular characterization. We've looked at how they respond to various drugs, pharmacological characterization. And like I said, it's now a significantly validated resource for the research community. This unique resource can and hopefully will support their prioritization of cancer drugs for kids. I think we talked about that. Again, drugs coming from any of the stakeholders out there who are interested in moving molecules forward, be it pharma, be it academia, nonprofits, et cetera, with the goal of accelerating bringing innovative therapies to children. And this is, I think, the important part, and I don't want to avoid saying this. Industry can no longer avoid their obligations when it comes to pediatric development by saying we don't have access to the resources necessary to research our molecule in a pediatric setting. ITCC-P4, in large part, has changed that. And now industry has a conduit directly to testing that can and is being employed to evaluate molecules that could very likely save the lives of our children.
Now, we have said that the project has ended, but of course it's very important about this non-profit company that we have alluded already at the beginning of this event. So maybe, Gilles, you can tell us exactly what is this entity and what has been done in order to ensure that all the results can be exploited to the extent that nothing is lost from all the work that has been done.
You're absolutely right. Really, the objective was to build an entity to exploit all the model developed for further industry and academic willing to develop new medicine. So Before the end of the project, we incorporated a non-for-profit legal entity under the German law to exploit all the models. And this is a very unique model because in this legal entity, we have the academic institutions who generated the model, and we have 3 contract research organizations, namely Charles River, EPO, and Xentech, who are really participating and running the experiment. So a very unique model for really using these pediatric tumor models and making this available to industry customer, available to academic customer. And this is important. So we have a kind of fee for service, but non-for-profit. But we are also running a research and an R&D program. And this R&D program is meant to further improve the model we have, expand these models, and really generate more and more predictable models to be used down the road for this pediatric evaluation. Just to highlight that when we do experiment for a customer, the data belong to the customer. And we believe this is an important thing. It's not an academic project to run, to make a publication. It's really generating information and generating data that are owned by the customer. And finally, we have been really discussing with the regulatory agencies. And last year, ITCC-P4 was considered and named as a member of the European Medicine Agency non-clinical stakeholder group, which I think is important because we, as such, really are setting up an asset which is recognized by the regulatory agencies as relevant to generate meaningful data and helpful for the customers, for the industry willing to develop new medicine. And you will tell me, well, does it work? Do people come? Indeed, more than 50 academic and industry contacts have been set up over the last 16 months. We have already 20 ongoing or planned projects and 1 fully executed with one of the large companies. So clearly, without making a large communication and marketing initiative and so on, we clearly feel that what we built is really helping and addressing the needs for industry and academic researchers to generate the preclinical data they need.
Maybe it's worth mentioning, because it looks easy, but that you have been spending quite an amount of time and effort during the project in order to arrive at this sustainability plan and this entity, just for the audience to know that it required a lot of work to do. But coming back now to you, Nicole, from the perspective of the children that have this concert today and their parents, how this research have a tangible impact that you see and progressing the field?
That's a good question, because it's something that usually research does feel very intangible, especially to a layperson like me. But what I can say, first of all, as a parent who had a child with cancer, the thing that we know very well is the need for speed, the need because children with cancer can't wait. And so what both Lou and Jill have talked about is about accelerating the process, going faster. And that's what we want. Right from the beginning of the research. So by ITCC-P4 developing a platform, but a robust platform, meaning that something that can be used later for marketing authorization, a robust platform for preclinical testing, what's happened is ITCC-P4 has enabled faster identification and prioritization of drugs, which could be suitable for development or clinical development in pediatric oncology. This means it's an acceleration that could lead to quicker availability of effective treatments for children. But also, there's a future impact because ITCC-P4 works on ongoing research initiatives globally as well, which could benefit children worldwide. They partner with international research institutions. And then finally, I would say what Gilles mentioned about ITCC-P4 becoming a nonprofit organization is really important as well, because it means that they are reinvesting any revenue generated. So it's sustainable, but also it means they will continuously improve and they will continue to have a pipeline of potential new drugs for children with cancer.
So now as some of you may know in the audience, that there is the revision of the European pediatric regulation as part of the revision of the general pharmaceutical legislation. So where do you see the value of having this new foundation at ITCC-P4 in this new environment as well, regulatory environment? And maybe this is a question for you, Lou and Gilles. Don't know who.
So maybe I can start, and Lou will further address. At the moment, the pharmaceutical package is being revised, not yet finalized. And what is interesting for us in the pediatric setting, it is proposed a more science-driven, which is how the medicine works to decide whether or not the drug should be developed in children, and patient-centric. What are the needs of children? And these are two important characteristics that we hope will be maintained in the ongoing negotiation and will be present at the end. And for that, it means that science-driven, we need more data. We need more data on how the target of a given drug is present or not in children, pediatric tumors. And we need some preclinical data, systematic, large, comprehensive preclinical data to help making the right decision and prioritizing. And you know, this is a key objective, because among all the medicine developed in adult, there is a real need to decide which one should move forward. So we believe that ITCC-P4 can be an important partner, I would say, in the implementation of the future revised pediatric regulation in Europe, by providing the preclinical data which are needed for the regulatory agencies and the industry to define which drug should move forward and which drug should not move forward.
And do you want to complement this?
Yes, that's well put, Gilles. Thank you. And I think the thing I'll add, and this occurred during the development of what became the platform and the ultimate nonprofit company, was that we brought leaders from both EMA and FDA together throughout the process. So what Gilles described from a European point of view also holds true to the other side of the Atlantic with the FDA, where they are in communication and they are both understanding, largely in the same way or similar way, the needs of children, the needs for preclinical data, and what value ITCC-P4 brings to ultimate development of drugs for children.
Great. We arrive towards the end of the first part of this in conversation. But before I move to the last question, I would like to remind the audience that feel free to put the question you may have into the Q&A box, and we will address them in a minute. But before we move to this Q&A, maybe a question to the three of you. With all the results delivered by the project, how do you see it evolve over the longer term, and what would be needed next to fight really cancer in children and really for the benefits of all the kids? So maybe I start with you, Gilles.
Oh, sure. So with ITCC-P4, this is a major milestone in pediatric oncology drug development. But this is not at all the end of the story of preclinical evaluation. There are brand new tumor models that will be developed further. We need better models to evaluate immuno-oncology compounds. We need to figure out how organoids can help facilitate the evaluation of this new medicine. So this is why this asset is important, and we will continue in our R&D to develop further more predictable and relevant model for the evaluation at the preclinical level. That is one of the further development that I think will be very important. And then we do have a message to industry. At the time, clearly oncology programs are a little bit squeezing around the world. The message is don't give up on childhood cancer. We have built with this important asset to help you define which drugs should move forward, to make it more efficient, and clearly to address the needs of children and adolescents with cancer, which are still there. So I believe there is a lot of work continuing to be done, and clearly ITCC-P4 will be pleased to be part of it.
Shall we move to you, Lou?
Sure. So just taking off from what Gilles said, yes, we need to increase the size and diversity of the models that we have in a traditional sense. And by that, I mean just identifying other tumor types, maybe not as common as some of the ones that we know very well, like osteosarcoma, rhabdomyosarcoma, et cetera. We definitely need to bring some of those in. But I think we also need to start bringing models in and taking the models that we have and putting them more into a context that is like what's happening in the child. So rather than using the mouse as essentially a big furry test tube where we take a tumor and put it into their flank, we actually start introducing tumors at the site at which they would develop in a child, called orthotopic models. So moving away from the easier approach of flank models to more difficult but more physiologically relevant orthotopic models, and also tying in with what Gilles said with immunotherapy. I think we also need to think about what really is killing the majority of our children in relapse refractory disease. That's more often than not metastasis. And how can we build models of metastasis? So not just looking at the primary tumor, but then looking at how we can develop therapeutics for what happens when that primary tumor escapes and evades and colonizes other areas, other parts of the child's body. And then finally, there's a data component to this. As we've generated tremendous amounts of data, which will be available to the public, but then the companies are going to come in, and I think we really need to figure out a way to work with them to make these data available so that we can continue to build at every step with every molecule a knowledge base that will help the next sponsor with their drug, but also increase the knowledge of how and why tumors in children evolve and how we can treat them.
Nicole, from your perspective.
Yeah, I think I can bring in obviously the more simplistic perspective, which is well, in a way, Gilles said also that we need companies to continue to get involved, get more involved, not give up on children. And us at ITCC-P4, we're not stopping with this. We're not resting on what we've done. We're going to continue to work. We need to continue to evaluate our own performance, and we need to continue to identify gaps, kind of what Lou just said, but any gaps, and make sure that what we've created, that the platform evolves with as science evolves and as maybe also the regulatory landscape evolves.
Thank you for really having shared with all of us your perspective. And we can start now the Q&A session. And we have already received a question. And I will read it to you, and I guess it will be more for you, Gilles or Lou. Did you notice that mutation in certain cancers turn into more aggressive ones? And how can AI give a hand to better prediction counting on this mutation? So that's a very specific question.
Sure. This question relates to the fact we need to understand what are the key biological alterations in the tumor of a child to best define which drug should be used or developed for this type of mutation. And of course, we have already generated large amount of data. I would just mention that in ITCC, we have more than 6,500 whole exome sequencing of pediatric tumors at the time of relapse. A meaningful asset to figure out what are these alterations and whether any new mutation is relevant for children. And of course, the development of machine learning will help very much identifying in all the alteration in a given disease in children, what are the relevant ones. So it's more research than evaluation of preclinical drugs, but it is clearly all the data we have generated that can be used down the road, including with this artificial intelligence, that's in English, in the words, artificial intelligence tools to help defining the best target for children.
I'll just add to that. This goes back to what I said before about taking the data that we already have, the data that we will generate in the future, and putting that back into an AI environment that will really help us understand what happens when we take a tumor type with what we think is to be a presumable driver mutation, treated with certain drugs. Are we truly affecting the biology the way we think? What are the compensatory changes that occur, et cetera? At some point, we're going to have to incorporate or adopt some sort of AI approach into the data analysis and eventual reduction to really understand the role that some of these so-called drivers play and understand how the compensatory mechanisms then kick in to ultimately lead to relapse refractory conditions.
Thank you very much. So please continue to put your question in your Q&A box. And while we are waiting for the question, there is another one. I'm an academic researcher working at identifying potential novel cancer medicines. How would I benefit from working with ITCC-P4? I don't know who would like to take this question.
So maybe I can. As I said, what we do is not only for industry, but for academic. And more than 40% of all the contacts we have are from academic institutions. So what we do propose to the academic researchers is access to the model we have developed, access to the large database of molecular data that we have generated along this model. And for their research, really, we provide them with the capability to test their asset on this fully characterized model and to give them access to the database as well. So clearly, ITCC-P4 is also there to really work and serve academic researchers.
Thank you very much. I'm checking now. Actually, I do not see any question in the box, any new question coming in. Maybe I wait another minute to see, or not minute, second, to see if something pops in. But maybe while we, yes, so we have already. Can you already share some example with class of compounds are being tested with the ITCC-P4 models right now? I don't know how much you can share already.
Well, of course, I cannot give the name of the compound of the name of the company. But interesting, we have been discussing tyrosine kinase inhibitor. We have been discussing ADCs, which is a very important new class of compound. And at the moment, ITCC-P4 is developing a capacity to look at the protein expression. We are developing a tissue microarray to be able to say, oh, this target of an ADC is present or not in childhood cancer. We have also some very, very innovative approach with academia about new immune treatment, because we do have already some models in humanized mice to be looked at. So yes, we have a brand type, and I can tell you, it is fascinating for me, an academic researchers, to see all the innovative approach that those people have really to address the needs of children and adolescents with cancer. So the quite bright type of assets which are discussed and are very soon evaluated in ITCC-P4.
So I guess hearing that, and probably Nicole, you will agree with me that it's nice to see promising and new novel approaches in order to fight cancer in children, and not having innovation there, because this is what we would like to see as well, innovation. I don't know if Nicole, you would like to comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when I hear Gilles talk just now about being excited about what he's seeing, that's really motivating, because it means that something is happening. And like I said at the beginning, for too long, things have stagnated, especially in certain types of childhood cancers. So that's what we want. We want, you know, things to start to be happening, but we can't stop there, because this is the preclinical, so it has to continue from there. And maybe I can even go back to your previous question about what can an academic researcher working in some institution somewhere, how can they, why would they get in touch with ITCC-P4? But it is also, as a patient advocate, we often see researchers, or at least the thing that we do not hope to see is researchers working in silos separately. So by getting in touch with ITCC-P4, by working with ITCC-P4, it's a way of fostering collaboration and not working separately, and bringing people together, which in rare cancers, like in pediatric cancers, it's absolutely essential that people work together.
So actually, we have another question coming in. So let me read it to you. As a pediatric hospital network, we are working on a similar platform in the area of rare disease in children, where we want to give a pharmaceutical company access to omics data. However, the feedback from the pharmaceutical companies was more that they don't want to search in the haystack, but would like to be pointed to the needles by basic research. What was your experience there?
So to this point, the way we work is when someone is coming to ITCC-P4, we discuss their assets, and in the discussion, there is one or two academic experts knowing well the disease who can help very much. We have the bioinformatician working on the database, where we can search in the database really all the relevant information, and we have one of the CRO discussing what would be the experiment. So this is just describing that this offer and discussion very early as really the three aspects: the academic expertise, the bioinformaticians, and the CRO for establishing the preclinical experiments. So we believe that this is helpful for the industry, because sometimes they don't have the resources or the time to deep dive into large database. They can do that on the website, but we can do that for them as well.
So another question that came in is, do you have already an example of the use of your toolkit to identify promising molecules that could form the basis of a new drug to treat childhood cancer? So I think you have already alluded a little bit of that, but maybe...
Yeah, we don't do drug discovery.
Yeah.
But anyone who has an asset in development can come to us and figure out where this asset would be relevant and how we could generate preclinical information. But we don't do drug discovery.
So another question, has the model achieved results to improve expectation of the light after treatment survival? So that we might be already still in the early days to say that, but...
Yes, indeed. ITCC-P4 is about a 1 year small startup working and starting generating. This question will be addressed, I guess, in the next 5 to 10 years, when we will see better drugs approved and showing with academic cooperative groups that they are effective for treating children, and demonstrating that we can increase the number of saved life and the quality of life. So it's a little bit early at the moment to say that ITCC-P4 is contributing to that, but we hope that little things will really help in this global view of making life better for all childhood survivors and making more children with cancer cured.
Another question that came in is, how would you how would you interact with a tech bio that wants to discover new asset using the ITCC-P4 database?
So the new bio can contact us. We are absolutely open, and then we can explore any gene they would have, how they are present or not in the model we do have, really to help defining further. So the database, the data are publicly available on the website, ITCC-P4.com, and we provide information about 100 genes which are demonstrated by the WHO as relevant for childhood cancer. So anyone can already explore quite a large amount of data. And we have also all the raw data that can be really used for researchers and for further evaluation. So that's why I encourage anyone who are interested to visit our website.
And I think we are going to put again the website so that everybody will have an ease to look at it.
Excellent.
Is it correct that ITCC-P4 is specifically geared towards the selection of promising molecules deriving from the adult pipeline, or is there also a role in anti-cancer medicine developed specifically for children? I think this is important to clarify.
Absolutely. Both. Absolutely both. We want to help decide whether a drug developed in adults is relevant or not for children, and we want to help all the startup, biotech, and so on, really developing specific pediatric medicine for childhood cancer to test them on our model, because our model of pediatric tumors. And whether the target is specific to pediatric tumors or from adult, we can evaluate it both. So yes, we are there to do both, and this is what we need to do. Prioritize the adult cancer drugs and develop the specific pediatric oncology drugs.
Let me just add to that real quickly. We chose the models to really define, as much as we could at the time, the heterogeneity found within the existing patient population. In so many cases, in particular, I'm thinking about sarcoma, we chose models that were sarcomas driven by mutations, fusions, whatever, that were specific to the child's tumor, that may not have, there may not be a path forward for existing adult drugs, for instance, but would require a custom solution for that child's tumor. So that heterogeneity is built in across the platform to allow for multiple approaches to identifying how to shut that tumor down.
Thank you. We are approaching towards the end, so maybe we will mention, actually there is another last question coming in that we'll take in. And afterwards, I think any question we can redirect or even answer after this event. But does ITCC-P4 facilitate individual patient tumor avatars, organoid PDX models, so that site and family would submit tissue from a high-risk disease for individuals' drug testing?
I see the point. First of all, during the IMI project, we had a pilot project to start figuring out whether we can develop organoids from the PDXs. And this is continuing development, and we hope that in the next years, we can incorporate some organoid models in our offer to the customer. But the question there is a little bit different. The question there is how to generate for a given patient a given model in the preclinical setting to identify which drug should move forward. So ITCC-P4 will not do this personalized approach because we are working on establishing model. This type of approach are being done by academic institutions. For example, it is done for patients with relapsed acute lymphoblastic leukemia, where academics look at the testing at the cytotoxicity in vitro to help deciding patients. So in a nutshell, we will incorporate down the road organoids, but we will don't do precision patient individualized approaches for treatment in ITCC-P4.
Thank you. So maybe now to wrap up this session, maybe I can ask all of you in one word, how would you describe the impact of the project or your experience in participating in this project? Lou, I'll start with you.
My word would be hope. ITCC-P4 is paving the way for new, more effective therapies to reach children in the future in a facile, straightforward way. That's my word, hope.
Hope. Gilles?
My word would be together, because ITCC is building public-private partnership project, putting around the table people who are not used to work together. And through ITCC-P4, we demonstrated that from day one to the last day, we learn to work together in a more efficient way in between industry, CROs, academic, including the patients and the advocate. So really together is absolutely essential, and we demonstrated it is of value.
And Nicole?
Well, Lou stole my word, because even though I really like Gilles' word, of course, together, I like the multi-stakeholder, I like that they're bringing in patient advocates like me. The word hope means a lot to a parent of a child with cancer, and that's how you survive. And there has to be hope, otherwise there's no point continuing. So I think that ITCC-P4, what it provides is the hope for a future, for new effective treatments in the near future, but also for long-term future development of what we talked about in one of the questions earlier about treatments in a few years and that would be less toxic, reduce long-term side effects, and cure more children with cancer.
Thank you very much. And again, I would like to thank you all for your valuable contribution, not only to demonstrate or show us what exactly ITCC-P4 has achieved, how everybody can benefit now from ITCC-P4 through the foundation or the company, but as well how you will continue, because I think indeed this is very important, and having hope and your dedication to continue the work in order to fight pediatric cancer. So thank you very much really for your insight today. Thank you for the audience for joining us, and please visit the ITCC-P4 website for more information. And if you have further questions, do not hesitate. We will pass them on and we can answer to you. I would like to thank as well my colleague from the communication team, Nassima and Catherine, who are behind the scene, but who have been instrumental for helping with the preparation and the running of this event. And finally, you may be interested in knowing more about the IHI portfolio cancer project. We have quite a number of projects addressing different type of cancer. Of course, it's more on the adult side, but still, I would encourage you to register to the Impact on Cancer webinar that will be held on the 19th of May 2025. And all the information is available on the website. And on this note, I would like to thank you all and to wish you a nice rest of the day. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.